Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video I am going to be talking about all 230 books that I read in 2022. I was hoping to beat last year's reading goal, which last year I read 234 books, so I was pretty close but just didn't quite make it. One of these I'm also actually still currently reading when I'm filming this, but I will probably be done by the time it's January 1st, so I am going to include it in this video. But what I'm going to do basically is scroll through my Goodreads reading challenge for the year and just tell you a little bit about each book, see if I even remember what the book is about, if anything about it stuck with me. And I have not looked at this list like in advance of this video to prepare anything to say about any of these, so there may be a lot that I just say like I don't even remember reading this book, but I'm going to talk about that because I feel like that in itself is a good sign of like whether or not the book was good. Is if I can still remember at the end of the year what it was about, it was probably a pretty good book. So let's just get into it. So I'm going to start with the beginning of the year, so the things I was reading in January, so the farthest from this point obviously. So the first 3 books I read of the year were all part of the same series. We have Power Plays and Straight A's by Eden Finley and Saxon James. This was the first book. I remember liking these books. They're hockey romances. They're all MM in a series. They're college. I did really enjoy them at the time, but I know when I got to sort of the later books, I started feeling like they were very repetitive. The second one I read was Face Offs and Cheap Shots. And then I read Goal Lines and First Times. I think that was where I sort of started feeling like they were getting a little bit repetitive. A lot of them in this series were like nerd and jock, like that was sort of the trope, and I felt like it was kind of annoying that every book had that same trope, except for one where it's 2 hockey players, I think. And so I sort of took a break after that one and thought maybe I was just reading them too close together, that's why they were sort of seeming similar. And then I read Worth the Fight by Vi Keeland. Honestly, I don't even remember this one. I remember I didn't like it, but I'm also not a big fan of like boxers or fighters or anything like that, so that's probably why I didn't like this one, because judging by the cover it looks like that's probably what that was, and the title obviously. Then I read Voyeur by Fiona Cole. This one I had seen around a ton before I read it. I don't remember a ton about this one. I remember that she works in like the Voyeur Club, and I want to say it's like someone no, that's a different book. I'm not actually sure what happened in this one anymore. I would continue on with that series, like I would be open to it, but I don't really remember what happened in that first book. Then after that I read My Best Friend's Sister by Q.B. Tyler. This was like a little novella. It was really, really short. And I remember it being exactly like the title says. It's literally just like a brother's best friend kind of little short story thing. It was good for what it was. Love Unexpected by Q.B. Tyler. I have a terrible time keeping Q.B. Tyler's books straight in my head. I know I love them all, but just looking at the title and the cover, I can't tell you which book is which. No, this is the stepfather one. Okay. I did really enjoy that one. I think this was the one that I was the most sort of iffy on when it came to Q.B. Tyler's books. If you don't know, Q.B. Tyler writes a very like taboo kind of stories. Obviously, you know, there's one with a stepfather, there's one with a basically guardian, there's one with a godfather. They're all very taboo situations. I personally do enjoy them. What I didn't like about this one, I remember, was that they are both sort of grieving the loss of the mother, and I felt like that played a huge role in them getting together, and I didn't like that. I felt like they were sort of leaning on each other because they were grieving, and I didn't love that. I felt like they might not have gotten together if they weren't going through that, and I don't know. It just didn't sit right with me, so this one wasn't like one that I really super loved. Then next I read Stolen Heir by Sophie Lark. This is the second book in the Brutal Birthright series. It is a kidnapper romance. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, I think, actually, which I really, really enjoyed. I did love this one. I do still remember that one. Then I read Still Beating by Jennifer Hartman. That is another kidnapper romance. Apparently I was into that in January. But I do remember that one vividly. Like, I will say that's a book that has stuck with me even to now. Like, I can imagine scenes from that book in my head. It follows a guy and girl who get kidnapped by this guy who is a serial killer who likes to make his victims fall in love with each other right before he kills them. And they know each other because he is her sister's fiance and they can't stand each other. So it's sort of an enemies to lovers, but like if they reach the lover's point, they get murdered. So it's sort of an interesting one. Like I said, definitely one that has stuck with me over the course of the year. Then I read The Year We Hid Away by Serena Bowen. I want to say this is the second book in her Ivy Years series. I didn't love these books. I think I gave them all 3 stars. They're hockey college romances, but there was just something about them that I just didn't love. I don't know, they weren't drawing me in the way that Serena Bowen's books normally do, and I feel like that just wasn't working for me. And so I didn't love that one. Then we have Savage Lover by Sophie Lark. That one I think was the one I didn't like because it was mostly focused on the guy robbing a bank, pretty much, and hardly anything about the romance really at all, and I didn't really vibe with that, didn't love it. Next was A Worthy Opponent by Katie Robert. This is part of the Wicked Villain series, which I did wrap up this year. That was sort of my goal at the beginning of the year, was to finish a lot of the series that I had started and just never gotten around to finishing. So I read that one. Honestly, couldn't tell you anything about it right now. Don't remember it at all. Then I read Under Lock by Mariana Zapata, another one that I remember really liking. I do think this is the one where he works in a tattoo shop, I think, but he's also in a motorcycle club. And I remember the ending of this one, but I don't remember this as well as I remember like The Wall of Winnipeg and Me or Culty. Like, it didn't stick with me as well as those books did, but I do remember liking it at the time. Then we have the Stay With Me, I think it's called, series by Nicole Fiorina. I did a whole reading vlog on this one, and I remember giving it 5 stars at the time, but I remember even thinking when I gave it 5 stars, it was mostly just because this book was not what I was expecting, to be honest. And I did enjoy it. I don't know that I remember enough about it that I would say it really stuck with me. I do remember that in the second book, things took a really drastic turn that I wasn't seeing coming, but I do remember enjoying it at the time, but couldn't tell you much about what it's about now. Then I read Dirty by Kylie Scott. I remember hating this one at the time, couldn't tell you what it's about now. Enemies by Tijin. I did really enjoy that one. I do recommend it a lot on my channel even now, and that is just a college enemies to lovers story, except I remember this one I was kind of confused because the guy in this is actually an NFL player, but for the longest time I couldn't figure out if he was a college football player or not. They didn't really clarify that very well in this book, but I did enjoy that one. Next was Running Wild by K.A. Tucker. This was probably my most anticipated and also probably most disappointing read of 2022. If you don't know, The Simple Wild is one of my favorite books of all time, and so a new book coming out in that series, I knew I had to have it, I had to read it. I did a reading vlog on this as well. Gave it 4 stars at the time, but I think even that was just because I got so caught up in being back in Alaska in this little town and just really loved that. But I think as a romance, this really was more like a 2 to 3 star. There's very little focus on the romance in this book, and on top of that, I didn't like the girl in this one. I just found she was so desperate to have a baby that she was literally willing to date pretty much anyone. Towards the end of the book, there's actually a moment where she is dating another guy and not the main guy, and she was just seemed to be over him in 5 seconds and was like, oh, I'll go have a baby with this guy instead, and I was just not feeling that. Didn't love that one. Like I said, I was sort of sad because it is one of my favorite series of all time. Then we have The Understatement of the Year. This is an MM college hockey romance. I remember liking it. Couldn't tell you anything about it right now, honestly. These books by Serena Bowen in particular just did not stick with me. I really prefer her Brooklyn Bruiser series to the college one, or the Ivy Years series. I just really didn't love that one. Then we have Unconditional by QB Tyler. This is the one I was thinking of before, where she ends up dating the cop who sort of saves her when she's a kid. Her parents are involved in a murder-suicide, and she is left obviously parentless, and this guy is a young 22-year-old cop and ends up taking her home with him and sort of raises her as her guardian. But now she is 18, and so things are getting a little complicated. I really enjoyed this one. Gave it probably 5 stars, honestly, at the time. I really love all of QB Tyler's books. Then we have Good Girl Complex by Elle Kennedy. This one was kind of a disappointment. I feel like Elle Kennedy's one of those authors that her traditionally published books just aren't as good as her other ones. Some authors I find it's the opposite, that I think their traditionally published is better, but with her in particular, I find her indie books are just a lot more up my alley, I guess. Then we have First Semester by QB Tyler. This was just a little novella. It's a student-professor romance. Don't really remember much about it. Didn't really love it at the time because it didn't really have a ton of plot. Then we have My Favorite Half-Night Stand by Christina Lauren. This one I remember little bits and pieces of, but not enough that I feel like it really stuck with me. I know it's 3 guys and a girl who are like professors or something in a university, and they all decide they're going to get dates for this event, and I think she ends up on a dating app talking to one of them or something. Then we have The Summer Proposal by Vi Keeland. I remember really liking this one at the time. I know it is a hockey romance, and I only remember that because I know this cover looks nothing like a hockey romance, and so that sort of has stuck with me. I think this is the one where he gives her a ticket to come to the game and she doesn't realize that he's a player. She thinks that he's going to meet her at the game, and it was pretty good. I remember enjoying it when I read it. We have The Shameless Hour by Serena Bowen. I did not like this one. I remembered when I got towards the end of the Ivy Years series, I was not vibing with the books anymore. Then we have Electric Idol by Katie Robert. This is part of the Neon Gods series. Couldn't tell you a thing about this one, to be honest, but I feel that way about most Katie Robert books. I read them and 5 minutes later I can't tell you what happened, but read that one, probably enjoyed it at the time. Then we have Royally Screwed by Emma Chase. I think I liked this one. Honestly, this is another one I don't remember anything about at this point. Don't know that I loved it even when I read it. Then we have The 15th Minute by Serena Bowen, which I believe was the final book in that series. Didn't love this one either. Don't remember anything about them. Then we have Always Been You by QB Tyler. This is the one where she dates her adopted brother. I really like this one. This one was probably my favorite QB Tyler book. I gave this one 5 stars for sure when I read it. Really, really enjoyed it. Then I read Hook, Line, and Sinker by Tessa Bailey. Really loved this one as well. Best Friends to Lovers. Still remember a ton about this one and really enjoyed it. Then we have Line Mates and Study Dates by Eden Finley and Saxon James. This is another one from that series. I think after this one was when I really said, like, okay, all these books are kind of getting repetitive, and I just stopped after that one. Then we have 3 Simple Rules by Nikki Sloan. This is the one I was thinking of when I was thinking of Voyeur, I'm pretty sure. This is where she gets a job at a blindfold club temporarily to make some money, and she ends up, I think it's a guy from her work, her boss or something, that comes in, and things sort of go from there. Then we have When Sparks Fly by Helena Hunting. This is the first book in the Spark House series. I liked this one. It was actually probably my favorite in the series. It's a Best Friends to Lovers. I really do remember quite a bit about this one. They were roommates. She gets in a car accident. He feels guilty and sort of offers to take care of her. And that's how they sort of start drifting from best friends to more. Then we have Indigo Ridge by Devney Perry. I really, really love this one as well. I gave it 5 stars. Absolutely remember every single thing about this one. It's small town. It's got like a mystery element to it. Really, really enjoyed it. The woman in it is the town sheriff, and the guy is like one of the, like big prominent families of the town. Really love that one. Under One Roof by Allie Hazelwood. Couldn't tell you a thing about. Don't remember anything. Juniper Hill, one of my favorites of the year. Absolutely loved it. I think about this book all the time and little moments from it. Absolutely loved it. Then we have The Rebel by Kendall Ryan. This one I DNF'd. I actually couldn't make it through it. I realized about halfway through that I really didn't care what happened to the main couple, and that was when I kind of decided I was done with Kendall Ryan. And then next I read A Favor for a Favor by Helena Hunting. This is part of the All In series. I believe it's book 2, and I don't remember specifically what each of these books was about, but I know I liked them when I read them, and I know, like, I remember the stories in my head, but I just can't tell you which story goes with which book. But I did enjoy that one. Then I read A Secret for a Secret, which I also remember really enjoying. I'm pretty sure that's the guy that was like a real like cinnamon roll kind of dude. Like, he orders milk when they go out to the bars and stuff. Next was Stuck With You by Allie Hazelwood, another one I don't really remember much. These were just like little novellas, so they didn't really stick with me very long. Then I read Christmas in Quincy, which I realized you're supposed to read that before you read Indigo Ridge and Juniper Hill, but I just didn't for whatever reason. And so then I finally did read it. I did enjoy it. I don't remember like a super ton of information about this one, but it was a novella, so there probably wasn't that much to remember to begin with. But I do remember like the main plot points and did really enjoy that one. Like, I am still planning on buying a physical copy of that, so did enjoy it. Then next was Bloody Heart by Sophie Lark. This is going to be like the other series. I don't remember which story went with which book. I don't remember this one specifically being one that I really loved. Broken Vow by Sophie Lark is the next one. That one I do know was my favorite of the series. I really, really loved that one. It took place mostly on a ranch, which is right up my alley. Really loved that. Then we have Below Zero by Allie Hazelwood. Don't remember anything about that. It's another little novella. Then we have Heavy Crown by Sophie Lark. I remember being a little bit disappointed in this one. It was the last book in the series, and I just felt like it didn't live up, especially after Broken Vow. I was kind of, having really high hopes going into the next book. I didn't really love it. Then I decided to start Sophie Lark's other series, which I want to say is called The Underworld or something like that. And the first book is Ivan, so that was the first book I read. This one was okay. I think I gave it 3 stars. I didn't really love it because the girl in this one, I remember this one pretty vividly. The girl in this one was supposed to be like this really super badass like girl that like takes down all these guys. Like I think she was actually like a hitman, and she goes to kill this guy basically, and he wakes up and catches her. And I just found she was like really quick to sort of admit defeat, and I was like, man, for a girl that we were really hyping up as like, you know, could take down this dude, she really like gave in too easily, like as far as I was concerned, and I didn't love that. Next was A Kiss for a Kiss by Helena Hunting. This was the final book in the All In series. I did not like this one. It is the parents of the couple in the 3rd book, I believe, or like one of their dad and one of their mom obviously gets together, and I didn't like this one because it mostly focuses on the fact that they are older and pregnant. And because of that, this whole book is just her being worried about all of the complications that come with being older and pregnant. There really wasn't much romance. It was just literally a story of an older woman getting pregnant. And I didn't really care, to be honest. Like, I was looking for romance and it just wasn't in this one. So this was definitely my least favorite. Then I read Snow by Sophie Lark. Don't remember this one at all. I think he was a fighter. That's pretty much all I remember, to be honest. Then I read The Worst Best Man by Mia Sosa. Absolutely hated that one. I remember giving it 2 stars. It was so generic and boring. Didn't love it. Then we have Little Lies by H. Hunting. I absolutely loved this book. It was one of my top 10 of the year. Really, really loved it. It is the spin-off of the All In and the Pucked series. It is now their kids. It's sort of a next generation thing. Really, really loved that one. Then we have Roman by Sophie Lark. Again, couldn't tell you anything about this one. Not a clue. Then we have The Coppersmith Farmhouse by Devney Perry. This one I remember for all the wrong reasons. I absolutely hated this book. I thought the guy in it was borderline abusive, and yet people think he is so swoony, and I'm just like, man, he's got so many red flags, it's not even funny. Really, really hated this one. Then I read Bad For You by Abby Glines. This was a reread. This is my favorite book in the Seabury series. I absolutely love it. It is about a small town church girl that sort of grows up thinking she's like the ugly duckling, and you know, no one wants to be friends with her and no one will talk to her, and everyone just is constantly telling her how ugly she is, and she ends up moving out on her own and meets this guy who is in a literal rock band, like, you know, full of piercings, tattoos, like crazy hair, the whole thing, and she's just like never seen someone like that before, and they start hanging out and things go from there. I really, really love that one. It's a really good one for me when I sort of feel like a reading slump is coming on. I'll go back and read that one because it's very, very quick also. Then we have Dom by Sophie Lark. This one I do not remember at all either. Stay by Serena Bowen and Elle Kennedy. I remember very faintly. I do remember enjoying it, but honestly, like, I remember that he is dating this girl who I think is like the equivalent, I think she's his virtual assistant. I think that's what it actually is. It's more like, in my head I'm thinking she's like a DoorDash person, but I'm pretty sure she like works at a company that is his virtual assistant, so they go out and get his groceries and whatever, and she starts making deliveries to his place and he gets to know her that way. He is a famous hockey player. Did really enjoy this one. Then I read There Are No Saints by Sophie Lark. I remember really liking this one. Obviously this one follows a serial killer, so it's kind of hard to forget. I will say I don't remember a ton about their romance. I remember more like the weird things that this guy was doing. And then obviously after that I read There Is No Devil, which again, just kind of remember the weird things. I don't even know that I remembered this book specifically. I think most of my memories are from the first book, but I also didn't really love the second book. I found it was a little bit unnecessary. Then I read Always Only You by Chloe Leese. Really, really loved this one. I think I gave it 5 stars. I just absolutely fell in love with this series, I feel like, with this book. Just really, really enjoyed it. It is a hockey player who is super, super sweet, and he is interested in the social media manager of the hockey team, but they are not allowed to date because there's like a rule about employees dating the players. Then I read the entire, I'm just going to include these all together, I read the entire Corrupt series by Penelope Douglas, or I think it's called Devil's Night. Yeah, that's what it's called. I read that whole series. I only liked the first book, to be honest. I don't remember a ton about the other books, but I do remember really enjoying the first book. Then I read Bad Girl Reputation by Elle Kennedy. I did not hate this one, but I didn't love it either. I think I gave this 4 stars. I do think this was an improvement on Good Girl Complex, but honestly, like, I don't remember really much of anything from this book. Then I'm just going to include this all in one go here. I also read the entire Addicted and Calloway Sisters series. I loved the Addicted books. I did not love the Calloway Sisters series. I think that those books were just honestly unnecessary. I would have been fine if we just started and finished with the Addicted series. Then I reread some more of the Seabury series. I read While It Lasts, which is I believe the one that takes place on a farm. This guy sort of gets in trouble and he ends up, his baseball coach sends him to a farm to work for the summer to sort of make up for what he's done. And there he meets the farmer's daughter and they're kind of, you know, getting to know each other that way. And then I read Sometimes It Lasts, which is another book in the series that follows the same couple. So after I read the first one, I kind of felt obligated to read the second one. So I read that one, and then I read Just for Now, which I think is the fourth book. It actually comes before those other books. But I read this one. This one is A Brother's Best Friend as well. Like I said, these are just really quick and easy books for me to read when I do feel like I'm entering a reading slump. I feel like they're very easy for me to get into. Then I read Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This one I did enjoy. To be honest, I will say, like, I don't remember this one as clearly as I would like to. I remember enjoying it, and I remember that it was at a cottage in Ontario, and that it had like the two brothers and whatever, but I don't remember the exact storyline, so I think I may actually go back and reread this one, because I do think that I would like to remember it. Then I read Sunkissed by Casey West. This was where I realized that I just like really don't vibe with YA all too often anymore, and didn't love this one. I think I gave it 3 stars, don't really remember much. Tattered by Devney Perry, I don't remember. I don't know, I want to say I didn't like that, or I probably would have continued on with the series, and because I didn't, I'm thinking that I didn't like this one, but I don't actually remember anything about it. And then I read, I think most of the, what is this called? I don't know what this is called, but the Bound by Honor series by Cora Riley. I read almost the entire series. I remember bits and pieces of it, but I honestly couldn't tell you which book was which or what happened between any of the couples or anything like that. I do remember reading it and enjoying it at the time, but I don't think it was like an all-time favorite. Then we have Book Lovers by Emily Henry. I didn't love this book. I gave it 3 stars. I think it's super, super overhyped. I felt like it was women's fiction too. It wasn't even romance, and it gets hyped as a great romance all the time, and really it just focused more on her relationship with her sister than anything. Then we have Starry-Eyed Love by Helena Hunting. This is the second book in the Sparkhouse series. I did like this one. I don't remember loving it. I think I gave all the books in the series 3 stars probably, except for the first one I might have given 4 because that one definitely was my favorite. Then I read The Birthday List by Devney Perry. I remember this faintly. I know she's completing a list that her, I think, dead husband has left behind of things he wanted to do on each birthday, and she is now completing the list to sort of say goodbye to him, and there's another guy that tags along for the trip. And then we have From Lukov with Love by Mariana Zapata. This is another Mariana Zapata that I feel like just didn't stick with me as much as Culty and Wild Winnipeg did. I did enjoy it. I did like it at the time. I remember reading it, but I think this is the first Mariana Zapata that I probably gave 4 stars to instead of 5. Wicked Beauty by Katie Robert. Couldn't tell you a thing. Like I said, all Katie Robert books I feel like I read and they instantly exit my brain right when I'm done them. Good Girl Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. I did not love. I feel like I remember that. I remember being very confused most of this book. I thought the whole plot was a little weird, didn't really make a ton of sense to me, and like since it's a YA book, I feel like for it to not make sense to me is a little concerning. But read that one. Then we have Love Next Door by Helena Hunting. I did enjoy this one. This is like a cottage romance. I don't remember a ton. I know she's living in a trailer, I think, beside his house or something. I remember that much. Then we have Mr. Masters by T.L. Swan. I did not like this book. I didn't like any of the decisions the guy made over the entire course of this book. Every single decision he made I thought was terrible. So I didn't love that one. Then I read the entire Wolf Hotel series by Nina West or K.A. Tucker. I did enjoy this. It's very like over the top, dramatic, trashy kind of series, but I enjoyed it for what it was. Then we have Ever After Always by Chloe Leese. This is again part of the Bergman Brothers series. I did like this one at the time, don't remember much about it now. Then we have Lessons in Sin by Pam Godwin. This one I do remember vividly because it was just so outside of the realm of what I normally read that it was very unique and has stuck with me. Waking Olivia by Elizabeth O'Rourke I feel like was really, really hyped, and I think that's what sort of let me down. I don't remember really much about this. I know she's a runner, I think, and she dates her coach, I think. But like honestly, I don't remember much. It didn't stick with me as much as I know it has most people. Then I read Praise by Sarah Kate. This one I hated as well. I just really, really hated it. I thought the 200 pages in the middle of this book could have been completely removed and the story would have been the exact same. But did not like that one. Then I read the entire Empire Nightclub series by Nina West and K.A. Tucker. This one I did like. This is another, again, super crazy, trashy, like all over the place kind of romance series, but I did enjoy it. Then we have Medicine Man by Saffron Kent. I read this one because I have wanted to read it for a very long time and finally got around to it, and I ended up giving this 2 stars. I didn't like it, mostly because I did not like the words that were used in this book. It just wasn't attractive to me. It was actually really grossing me out, and I did not like that. Then I read The Beast by Katie Robert. Again, don't remember much. I also read The Sea Witch by Katie Robert and Queen Takes Rose. I do remember Queen Takes Rose because I can actually say that's like one of my favorite sapphic books I've ever read. Then I read Handle with Care by Helena Hunting. I don't even remember reading this book, to be honest. Like, I have no clue what that was about. Then With You Forever by Chloe Leese. This one I remember very, very faintly, not super well. Then I read the entire The Summer I Turned Pretty series by Jenny Han. I liked the first 2 books in this. I did not like the last one. Honestly, at this point, I don't remember much about any of them. Didn't stick with me at all. Then I read Everything for You by Chloe Leese. This one I absolutely loved. This was my favorite book of the year. It has so many good tropes in it. It is an soccer romance, and it is age gap. There's an only one bed scene. It's enemies to lovers. They're neighbors. Like, it's got everything I love in a romance in that one. I really, really loved it. Then I read Lyrics of a Small Town by Abby Glines. This one was a very big letdown as well. This one I think I gave 2 or 3 stars. It really bothered me that this book followed her hanging out with another guy for the most part, and the guy she's supposed to be with is getting jealous, but there was also no reason for him to be jealous, and I thought that the whole thing was just kind of stupid. And so I didn't love that one. Then I read Garnet Flats by Devney Perry. This is the 3rd book in the Eden series. I didn't love this one as much as the others, but I did enjoy it. It was pretty good for what it was. Then I read I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy. I feel like everybody read this year. This one I really loved. Obviously, that book stuck with me super well because it just would with anyone that read it. Then I read the Twisted series, the first 3 books, Twisted Love, Twisted Games, and Twisted Hate. I didn't love the first 2. I will say the 3rd is my favorite so far. Didn't really love any of them though. I do not remember much about any of those, to be honest. Then I read Hooked by Emily McIntyre. I remember absolutely nothing about that book, and I wanted to love it, so I'm kind of sad that I remember nothing about it. Then I read The Devil and the Devil's Advocate by Ashley Jade. That one I remember being really, really crazy, but I don't remember like a ton about what actually happened in it. Then we have Midnight Lily by Mia Sheridan. This was a horrible book. This was like the kind of book that I finished and I had to Google what actually happened because I still didn't understand, and even after Googling, I still don't really understand what happened in this book. It was just so ridiculously confusing, and I didn't love that. And so that was definitely not one that I would recommend. Then I read Dream On by Angie Hockman. This one I did enjoy. I don't remember a ton about it, but I do remember like faintly what this one was about. Next we have Love at First Fight by Carrie Aarons, which I remember this one being really, really short, but I do remember liking it. I remember this one followed a girl whose boyfriend dumps her and says he's moving abroad for a year, and she's already planned to rent this lake house with a bunch of his friends, and so she decides since she's already paid for it, she's going to go anyway because obviously he's not going to be there, and she ends up sort of getting involved with his best friend who's kind of always had a thing for her but couldn't do anything about it. But he also has just been super mean to her over the years because of that. And so I did really enjoy this one. I remember this one pretty well as well. Then I read Smut by Karina Halley. This one I do remember faintly. I know they're in a college writing class together, I think, and they are writing a romance, I believe. Just by the title, I figure that's what happened, but I don't remember a ton about this one. Then we have the remaking of Corbin Whale by Rowan Parrish. This one I really liked. This was an very cozy, fall, very like atmospheric kind of book. I really enjoyed this one. It's really good if you're looking for something, like I said, just super cozy, chill, very like low stakes involved, just really a cozy romance. Did really enjoy this one. Then we have Bad Boy Blues by Saffron Kent. I remember this one because everyone talks about this and says it's a bully romance, but I find really it's more of a like post-bully romance, I guess, in the sense that he is no longer actively bullying her. They are older and they've now kind of ended up in the same place again, and they're just kind of getting to know each other again, but they're not actively, like, he's not actively bullying her during the story or anything. Then we have Shame by Fiona Cole. This one I remember there was a lot of sort of controversy around this one because it does deal with high schoolers who are sort of exploring kinks together, but also it's not that crazy. They're pretty tame, honestly, in the parts of the books where they're 17, and then it does time jump for most of the books, so it's like really not that big a deal. But that one was okay. I remember like a very small little bit of that one. Then we have From the Jump by Lacey Walden. This one I was really excited for because I really, really loved The Layover by this author. This one I didn't love as much as that one, but I did still enjoy. It is a traveling, I think it's a best friends to lovers if I'm not mistaken. She's got this like friend group from college that always goes on a trip, and she always says no because she's always put her work ahead of them. And then one day she kind of just realizes that she's not really getting anywhere with work, so she's like, why am I putting all this effort into this and I'm missing out on these moments with my friends for no reason? So she decides to go on this trip at the last minute and ends up like sharing a tent with this guy and different things. It was really cute. I did enjoy it. Then next we have Sins of Seven by Penelope Ward. This one I know I did not like. I remember giving this one 2 stars. I really hated how the ending of this book played out. And I wasn't a super huge fan of like where it was going even before then, but I remember really hating the ending. So wasn't, you know, in love with that one. Then we have Hating You by J.L. Beck and C. Hallman. This was a bully romance. I believe it's University, if I'm not mistaken. I did really like this one, actually. This is the one where the girl's sister, I believe, has accused the guy's brother of something, and it sort of caused like this like natural animosity between them, and he is kind of a jerk to her because of what has happened between their siblings, and things go from there. Like I said, I did really like this one. It was a really good bully romance. Then I read Puck Me Secretly by Odette Stone. I remember really liking this series, but this book particularly I don't really remember anything about, to be honest. If I read the synopsis again, I probably would like remember some of it, but it's not one that really sticks in my head. Then we have Go Hex Yourself by Jessica Clare. I absolutely love this book. I read a ton of witchy romances this year, and this was my all-time favorite out of all of them. Really enjoyed it. It's definitely got like Halloween Town vibes. It's about this girl who applies for a job thinking it's for a card game, but it ends up being actually for being a witch's familiar, and this witch has a nephew who absolutely cannot stand the main character and just wants her gone, and it's like really got like a good enemies to lovers arc in it. Really love this one. Then we have Steadfast by Serena Bowen. This is part of her True North series. I believe this is the second book, and it follows the guy who's working on the farm in the first book. I did like this one. I like the sort of series as a whole because it's like very small town, you know, like literal farms, and so I did enjoy that part of this book. Then we have The Final Gambit by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. This is the final book in the Inheritance Games series. I did really like this one as well. Pretty sure I gave it 5 stars. Really loved that series as a whole. I do wish I had read them like all back to back. I think that would have been the way to go with these, because there were definitely things that I wasn't remembering from the previous books. Then we have Angelica Frankenstein Makes Her Match by Sally Thorne. This one was okay, honestly, like not something super special. I feel like when I read this book, I thought it was good until I sort of thought about the fact that this was also the same author that wrote The Hating Game, and this really did not live up to The Hating Game. And so I feel like that sort of made me feel worse about this book, I guess, where I kind of feel like it could have been better because of who the author was. And honestly, I meant to include Sally Thorne in my video of like authors I probably wasn't going to read from again, because her last couple books just like have not been great, and I feel like none of them are living up to The Hating Game, so I'm just like not really interested in picking up her new releases. But this one, like I said, was really weird, didn't really like it. It was okay for like a spooky season read, but other than that, like I probably wouldn't pick this up any other time of the year. Then we have 3 Hard Lessons by Nikki Sloan. I do not remember anything. I've read most of this series. I don't remember anything from any of these books, but I read them, obviously. Then we have The Saturday Night Ghost Club by Craig Davidson. This one I remember listening to very early in the morning, and I like pretty much zoned out for most of the audiobook. It was not what I was expecting. It was way more sort of introspective than I was looking for. I literally just wanted to read like a cozy little ghost story, and that's not what this was, so I was pretty let down by that one. Then we have Home Game by Odette Stone. This is the second book in that same series that I was talking about. This one I did like. I do remember this one. It is about a guy who ends up sort of taking in a homeless girl kind of thing, and I did really enjoy this one. I thought it was probably my favorite of the series. Then I read Pumpkin Everything by Beth Labonte. This was a very Hallmarky, small town, Halloween-esque kind of book. I did really enjoy this one. I do remember it pretty vividly. Then we have Not the Witch You Wed by April Asher. This one was okay. Another one of the witchy reads I read. I found this one had too much sort of politics going on in it for me. Didn't really vibe with that. Then we have Moonshot by Alessandra Torre. This one I don't remember a ton of. I remember not really vibing with it. Like I just feel like I didn't like this as much as everybody else did. Then we have The Clover Chapel by Devney Perry. Honestly, I don't remember this one at all. I want to say they get married in Vegas or something and then find out that they were married in Vegas, but like I literally don't remember anything from that book. Then we have The Unmatchmakers by Jackie Lau. This one I really wanted to love because it's actually set in Toronto's cottage country, so I was really excited about that, but it ended up just being like super over the top and weird. Didn't really love that. Then we have Even If It Hurts by Marnie Mann. This one, I don't remember at all. I remember being disappointed in it. I don't think it lived up to what it was supposed to be. Small Town Big Magic by Hazel Beck was easily the worst book I read this year. Absolutely terrible. I have a whole video on that if you want to watch it. Then I have The Kiss Curse by Erin Sterling. This one I did enjoy. Obviously you can tell we're like in the October sort of area of books right now. This is the second book to The X-Hacks, which I also enjoyed. They're very sort of light Halloween cozy romances. I really enjoyed that. Then I read One of Us Is Next by Karen M. McManus. I really love this one. I gave it 5 stars. I loved One of Us Is Lying, but I found that it was like predictable. Like I knew who was going to be responsible from the start of the book, so I didn't love that aspect, but I did really like this sequel. Thought it was really well done, and I find her writing is just really easy to read and really enjoyable to read. Then I read A Merry Little Meet Cute by Julie Murphy and Sierra Simone. This one was a little bit of a letdown. This was, I think, the closest I got to a Christmas romance that was in the middle of what I was looking for. I always say Christmas romances I find are either straight up erotica or they are like cheesy, hallmarky, super clean cut kind of romances, and I want something in the middle of that, and I think this was the closest to being in the middle, but I also feel like with Sierra Simone being one of the authors of this, I was expecting more and just didn't get it. Then I read Three Little Mistakes by Nikki Sloan. Again, I don't remember anything of these books, but I know there was not a lot of plot content in them, so that's probably why I'm not remembering anything. Then I read The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. This one I did enjoy. I would have probably given this one like a solid 4.5 stars, but I found the ending was super cheesy and I didn't love that. Then I read Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. I also did not like this book. I will remember this one though for a long time because of how much I didn't like it, which is not exactly great. Didn't really love that. Then we have Hex Appeal by Kate Johnson. This one I remember, again, probably for all the wrong reasons. I didn't love this one either. It was very confusing. It had a lot going on in it and I just didn't really vibe with it. Then I reread The Wall of Winnipeg and Me by Mariana Zapata, which was just as great the second time as it was the first time. If you haven't heard of it, it is an enemies to lovers book. It is super good. It's between a football player and his assistant. Really love that one. Then I read Three Dirty Secrets by Nikki Sloan. Again, don't remember anything. Nothing More to Tell by Karen M. McManus. I don't remember this off the top of my head, but I know if I read the synopsis it would come back to me. But I do remember really liking that one. Then I read The Project by Courtney Summers. This one I found was a big letdown. This one is very obvious from the synopsis of the book that it is about a cult. Like, it's just not hidden. It's very well known. And I feel like they sort of made it that was the plot twist in the book, but it was like everybody already knew that starting this book. So I found it was very boring because most of it we weren't really getting anywhere, and then the ending was exactly what you would have thought it was. So I didn't love this one. Then I read The Ivies by Alexa Dawn. This one I was liking until the end. I found the ending was so stupid and like out of left field. It just didn't make any sense. Then I read The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandana. This one I did really like. I don't remember a ton. I remember that she is like teaching these little witches in this house and the witches can't be together. And that's it. I don't remember a lot about the romance in this one. I remember like the house and the different things that she was doing with the kids, but that's all I remember. I don't remember anything about her and this guy. A Letter to Three Witches by Elizabeth Bass. I remember hating this book. It was really dumb, made absolutely no sense. Would not recommend that one. To Love Jason Thorne by Ella Mays, I absolutely loved. 5-star read, 100% was on my top 10 of the year. Really loved that one. It's a brother's best friend. They were friends when they were kids. He moves away and now he's back and she's written a book and they want him to star in the movie for this book. And it's just really cute. I really loved this one. Then I read Witch Please by Anne Inguire. I'm pretty sure I DNF'd this one. It was really boring and I did not like it. So I'm pretty sure I did DNF this one. When in Rome by Sarah Adams I really enjoyed and honestly wasn't expecting to because I thought it was actually going to be like a Rome, Italy, like vacation kind of romance, and that's not my favorite thing in the world, but this is actually a small town romance, which like I said the title would make you think that it's not, but it is. I really enjoyed this one. It's a One of Them is Famous book. Really liked that as well. Then we have Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. I don't know about this one. I don't remember much, to be honest. I feel like this was so similar to The Love Hypothesis though, And I think that really ruined it for me, was it just seemed so familiar. Then we have Witchful Thinking by Celestine Martin. This one had so much potential. I remember reading the beginning and thinking it was going to be great, and just the longer it went on, the stupider it seemed to get, and I didn't love that, obviously, and so I didn't end up loving this one. The Dead Romantics by Ashley Poston I feel like was like the it book of the fall, and this one I did enjoy. I think it was really unique in what it did, and I enjoyed that. Not really like my all-time favorite book or anything like that, but I did enjoy that one. Then we have The Christmas Clash by Suzanne Park. I remember being really disappointed by this one because it sounds so in-your-face Christmassy when you read the synopsis, and there's like barely any Christmas in this book, so I was really let down by that, and so wasn't the biggest fan of this one. Then I read To Hate Adam Connor by Ella Mays, which I also really loved. Another one of them is famous. She is kind of spying on him over the fence of her friend's house, and he is like a famous actor, I think, and thinks she's like a stalker, and I really liked that one. Then we have The Roughest Draft by Emily Wibberley and Austin Sigmund Broca. This one I don't remember a ton about. I remember them being at a beach house, and I know they're co-authors and they're kind of forced to write this book together, and that's all I really remember from this one. It was good, like when I read it I didn't hate it. Then we have The Penalty Box by Odette Stone, which I also don't really remember at all. And High Risk Rookie I also don't remember. Then we have The House Across the Lake by Riley Sager. This one I did not like at all. I gave it 2 stars. I did this for the I Read Haley Pham's Favorite Books video, and I just didn't like, and I'm going to say what it is that I didn't like about this, but I sort of feel like it's a spoiler. So I'll put a timestamp on the screen that you can skip to if you want to skip spoilers. But basically what I didn't like about this was that it had a paranormal aspect to it, and I didn't realize that when I picked this up. I like my thrillers to be very like realistic and well explained, and I feel like because this sort of just chalked everything up to like a paranormal existence, I feel like that ruined it for me, because it didn't explain anything. It was just like, oh, the reason this crazy thing is happening is like magic, and I was just like, okay, like that seems like such a like cheap way of going about it, and I just really didn't like that. So I really didn't like this book. Then I read It Starts With Us by Colleen Hoover. Obviously everybody read this book this year. I enjoyed this book for what it was. I didn't have like crazy high hopes or anything. I knew this was going to be an extended epilogue to It Ends With Us. I wasn't expecting a plot twist. I wasn't expecting anything super crazy, so I was pretty satisfied with that one, to be honest. Then I read The Rivalry by Nikki Sloan. This one I remember not liking because it's about like 2 people that go to rival schools, and they are super into that like rivalry. Like the girl literally will not go near this guy when she finds out what school he goes to, and I just found that that was really overdone in this. Like it seemed kind of stupid that you would turn down your soulmate just because he went to a different school, like, and that's what she was doing, and I just didn't love that. Next I read Love Light Farms by BK Borison. This one I feel like I need to reread because I did read it and I did enjoy it, but I feel like I didn't enjoy it as much as everybody else has that has been hyping it up. So I almost feel like I need to go back and reread it because I honestly don't remember a ton about it. So I'm like, maybe I missed something that everybody else is like really loving. So I do actually want to go back and reread that one. Then I read The Wrong Game by Candy Steiner. This one is where she gets tickets to a football game, and she bought them for like her ex-husband, I think. And she's decided she's going to take a different guy to each game now to go on all these dates. And she's talking about it with her friend at the bar, and the bartender offers to be her first like test date. And she takes him up on it, and things sort of go from there. I did like this one. Then I read If You Ask Me by Libby Hubsher. Really hated this one. Definitely women's fiction. The guy makes like very brief appearances in this book. Did not like that. Then I read Eyes on Me by Sarah Kate. This one I did like. This one follows a guy who ends up falling for his stepsister, who is also a cam girl, who he finds that out like by accident. He's like on a site and sees her, and then he's like, oh my god, like I know her. And I really liked that one. That was really good. Then after that I read Better Than the Movies by Lynn Painter. I loved this book. Gave it 4.5 stars. It's probably the first YA book that I've ever given 4.5 stars to. Really loved it. I actually got the physical copy for Christmas. Absolutely loved this one. Then I read Belladonna by Adeline Grace. I do not remember a lot about this book. I remember thinking it was so crazy. There was so much going on in it, and I would probably have to reread this if I wanted to pick up the next book in the series when it comes out. But I do remember really loving it. Like I gave this 5 stars, but I honestly don't remember anything anymore. Now that I'm thinking about it, a little bit is coming back to me, but I do think I definitely have to reread that to read the next book. Then I read One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. which I also did not love. I felt like this was just really unemotional, and I was expecting it to be very emotional, so that was a little disappointing. Then I read Daisy Hates by Jessa Hastings, which I also did not like. I hated this one even more than the first one, and that was where I decided to end the series, was after that book. I had to force myself to finish that book. Like, I could barely get through it. Then I read Even If It Hurts by Sam Mariano. That one I remember thinking it was, like, good, but it also was, like, really forcing the darker aspects of it. Like, there were certain things that happened, I think, just to make the book seem darker. Like, they really served no purpose in the story or anything, and they didn't really make all that much sense, but I think they made the story darker, and that's why they were included, and I didn't love that. Then we have Room Hate by Penelope Ward. I remember really liking the first half of this book and really not liking the second half. I felt like things went downhill really quickly with this one. The Cruel Prince I read, thought it was okay, figured I'd give the second one a shot because everyone says that that one's better. So then I read The Wicked King and didn't like that one either. This is like marketed as a fantasy romance, and there is quite literally, I would say, maybe 3% romance in these books. The rest is all just like straight up fantasy. There is hardly any romance, so if you're picking these books up for the romance, don't. Then I read The Off Limits Rule by Sarah Adams. I don't remember this one at all. The Temporary Roomie by Sarah Adams. I also don't really remember. I think this is the one where he's a gynecologist and he has a hard time getting dates because of it. But then he ends up dating like this girl that he hates, I think, who has to move in with him. I like very faintly remember that. Then I read The Hardest Fall by Ella Mays. I do not remember this at all. Like, I feel like I blacked out reading this book. I just literally do not remember it. Then we have Maybe Now by Colleen Hoover. Oh, this is out of order. So I read Maybe Not first and didn't really like connect with it, mostly because I think I don't remember what happened in the first book. Then I read Maybe Now, which was okay. Still didn't really care because I don't remember what happened in the first book. Then I read What Was Meant to Be by QB Tyler. This is her newest release, the one that came out this year. And this one is about a girl who dates her godfather, which I also really enjoyed. I gave this 4.5 stars. I found it was a little on the long side, but that may have just been me being a slow reader. Then I read Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. This one I really enjoyed. It's good, like, small town, city girl romance. Then I read Beyond the Wand by Tom Felton. This one I felt like was good. It does give you a look into his life, like when he was filming Harry Potter, which I did enjoy. Then I read Love in the Time of Serial Killers, and I think the author of this is Alicia Thompson. The font on this is so tiny. But that book, it'll be on the screen so you can see the author. But I did not really love this one. It was okay. I feel like it didn't focus as much on the synopsis as it should have. The synopsis says that she, thinks this neighbor guy is a serial killer and is, like, avoiding him and whatever, but she literally thinks that for 5 minutes and then it's over, so I didn't really love that. Next, I read The Initiation by Nikki Sloan, which I don't remember a ton about. The Deception by Nikki Sloan and The Obsession by Nikki Sloan. These, I remember what happened, but it's kind of a spoiler, the only thing I remember. And I didn't like where the story was headed, so I never finished the series. Then I read the After graphic novel. This was okay. I'm glad I didn't purchase it. I think I showed it in a haul. I did purchase it, but I ended up returning it because I was like, you know what, I don't need to own this. And I decided to read it from the library, so I checked it out, read it. It was okay. Like I said, I'm glad I didn't keep the one that I ordered because I don't think I need to own that. Then I read The American Roommate Experiment by Elena Armis. Hated this book. Super boring. Did not like it. Then I read Friends, Lovers, and the Big Terrible Thing by Matthew Perry. This one is a very depressing book, obviously, and it was good for what it was. I did enjoy it. I found it bounced back and forth timeline-wise quite a bit, which was a little frustrating, but other than that, it was pretty good. Better Than Fiction by Alexa Martin. This one was really good. I liked that in this one the girl inherits a bookstore and she's not happy about it, which I feel like is the opposite of most of these books. Normally they inherit a bookstore and they're super excited. She hates reading, hates the bookstore, is only keeping it because she feels like that's what her grandmother would have wanted, and really liked that one. Then I read Mr. Wrong Number by Lynn Painter. I enjoyed this one. I don't remember it though. I will say I think it was a brother's best friend, and I know they're like texting each other, but he knows he's texting her, but she doesn't know that it's him, or the other way around, something like that, where they're like texting and one of them doesn't know it's the other person. But I did like that one. Then I read Mary Jane by Jessica Anya Blau. This one to me was just kind of boring. I didn't really like it. I found it was just like a coming of age story, and I think I'm past that at this point in my life. Didn't really care about that one. I then reread The Deal by Elle Kennedy, which I did enjoy. Really love that one. Then I read Vow to Protect by J.L. Beck and Monica Corwin. Couldn't tell you a thing about it. Then I read Delilah Green Doesn't Care by Ashley Herring Blake. This one, I did not like the main character. I found that the characters in this book were very, very juvenile, and I found out afterwards that the author normally writes YA, and I think that may have been where that was coming from. But I did not like this one. I found, like, she was supposed to be 30 years old, and she was still harping on things that happened when she was, like, 15. And I was like, you know what, you need to move on with your life, and that was just not happening, and I did not like that. Then I read Promises to Keep by J.L. Beck and Monica Corwin. This is the second book to the other book. I don't remember this one either, to be honest. I know it has something to do with an arranged marriage, I think. Then I read Reminders of Him by Colleen Hoover. This is 100% women's fiction. I don't know how anyone could consider this a romance. She literally, there's maybe 5% of this book that is romance, and the rest is her trying to get her daughter back after she gets out of prison. And even that, like, wasn't all that exciting, because it's not like she has to actually go out and, like, search for her daughter. She knows exactly where she is. She knows who has her. And, like, it wasn't exciting. Then I read The Fine Print by Lauren Asher. I really enjoyed this. I knew I was going to because I love Disney World. So did really enjoy this one. I do remember it pretty clearly, but I also, we're getting into the books that I read this month, so obviously I'm going to remember them a little bit better. Then I read Pretty Little Savage by Lucy Smoke. This one I did not like. This one had a girl in it that was very much, you know, kept saying she wasn't like other girls, and I just really could not handle that. Didn't like this one. Then I read Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher, and if I hadn't already filmed my top 10 books of the year, this 100% would have been in it, because I freaking loved this book. It was so, so good. I wanted to soak up, like, every second of it. It was amazing. Really, really loved it. Then I read Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This one I did not love. I found this was very generic for a small town romance. Like, normally when I read a small town romance, I want to feel like I'm in that small town. And with this one, I just felt like everything was so replaceable. Like, it was very much like a stock small town. It was not unique. We didn't really get to hear about the things in this town. It was just very generic, and I didn't love that. Then I read All I Want for Christmas by Maggie Knox. This one was another disappointment. This one read like a bad soap opera. Like, you know, soap operas with, like, the really terrible acting? That's what this book reminded me of. It was all over dramatic. The entire plotline rested on miscommunication after miscommunication, and I just really hated that. One of them's keeping a secret that's, like, not even really a secret, and just all to create more drama, and I just really hated all of it. Then I read Tangled in Tinsel by Trilina Pucci. This one I did like for what it was. This is a reverse harem. The girl is an interior decorator decorating this house in the mountains for Christmas, and there's 4 guys that are staying in this house that are paying her to decorate it, and a huge snowstorm hits and they all get stuck there together, and obviously things go from there. Did like this one for what it was, like I said. Then I read A Very Merry Bromance by Alyssa K. Adams. I thought this one was okay. I was hoping to love it more than I did. It just seemed to have a lot going on, and it didn't all interconnect very well, and I didn't love that. Then I read the entire Sutter Lake series by Catherine Cowles. I loved all of these books. They are super, super good. Definitely recommend if you like small town books. Really good for that. Then I read Make a Wish by Helena Hunting. This was actually an arc. This book comes out, I believe, in mid-January. This is the 3rd and final book in the Spark House series. This one follows a girl who was a nanny for this guy and his daughter, and she almost kisses him one night, and then he moves away pretty shortly after, and she sort of thinks it's because of the kiss. And now he's back. It's like 7 years later, and he's back, single dad of this little girl, and they run into each other at an event at Spark House, and things sort of go from there. Like I said, thought this one was good. Probably wasn't my least favorite of the series, but not my favorite either. It was just okay. Then I read Next to Never by Penelope Douglas, which I hated, mostly because I feel like I was sort of lied to about what this book is about. Because the synopsis makes it sound like this is Quinn's story, and it is not. Really, it's the story of her parents. And it's also super weird because she gets this book in the mail that's like a non-PG version of a romance book of her parents' story. And I just thought that was so strange. And most of this book is just her reading this book, so that's most of what you're reading is the story of her parents. And I just didn't care. I didn't think that's what I was picking up, so I was kind of upset with that. Didn't really love it. And the last book is the book that I'm actually currently reading as I'm filming this, but I'm hoping to finish it before the end of the year. And that is the second semester book by Q.B. Tyler. This is just a little novella. I am not loving this so far, mostly because it follows a girl who ends up dating her dad's best friend, and he is a partner at the law firm that her dad works at, and so she is interning there and she's seeing him a lot. And I think I would have liked this if he met her and was like, oh my gosh, I've never met a girl like you, like that's why I want to be with you. But from like right off the start of this book, you know that this guy sleeps with like pretty much every intern and paralegal in this office. And I feel like that's just ruining the whole book for me, is I'm like, she's literally just like the new girl that walked in and now he wants her instead of the one he was sleeping with before. And that is really bothering me about this one, so I don't know that I'm going to love it. But that is going to be my last book of the year. And so those are all 230 books that I read this year. I am going to take a little bit of a break now. Obviously, I've been doing a video a day since the beginning of December, and I don't know when I'm going to be back. I will be back with like my 2023 like reading goals video. That will probably be soon, but then after that I may take an even longer break because I've actually planned nothing for January. Like, I have no video plans. I don't know how much I'm going to be reading. Like I said, I'm going to be tearing down my room basically. I have to take all this stuff down. I'm building a new bookshelf. I have to like clean everything and organize everything and get my tree down and all that stuff. So I may be gone for a little while, but we shall see what happens with that. I'm not promising any sort of upload schedule consistently for January. But if you made it this far, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. Like I said, I will be doing more videos at some point. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.